Picture this. It's the Middle Ages and life is tough. You're a peasant working tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, eating the same boring bread every day, and your idea of a vacation is simply not getting the plague. But here's the twist. Medieval peasants knew how to throw a party better than anyone today. Welcome to the hidden world of medieval peasant festivals. Life back then was no joke. Peasants worked harder than a TikTok influencer chasing viral fame. They plowed fields, tended animals, and paid heavy taxes to their lords. Fun? Not exactly. But when they partied hard. These festivals weren't just a break from work. They were a lifeline, a rebellion, and sometimes even a little bit magical. Today we're diving into the secrets of these festivals, why they happened, what went down, and how they shaped the lives of those who celebrated them. It's not just about eating, drinking, and dancing, though there was plenty of that. These festivals were about survival, rebellion, and a glimpse into the soul of medieval life. So grab a mug of ale or your favorite drink, and let's start with the most surprising fact. Life for medieval peasants was far from easy. Imagine working 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, with festivals serving as your only respite. These celebrations weren't merely about eating, drinking, and dancing. They were a lifeline. The church and lords permitted them, recognizing that everyone needs a break to avoid revolt. Festivals were intricately tied to the farming calendar, marking key moments like planting, growing, and harvesting. Events like Plough Monday, where peasants paraded decorated ploughs and harvest home, a grand feast celebrating the end of the farming season, brought entire villages together. These gatherings fostered a sense of community and joy, helping peasants endure the daily grind. All right, let's get real for a second. Imagine working 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Your back is aching, your hands are calloused, and your idea of a good time is, well, not collapsing in the fields. That was life for medieval peasants. But here's the kicker: festivals were their only escape. Think of it as their version of a weekend, except instead of Netflix and chill, it was ale, dancing, and maybe a roasted pig if they were lucky. Fun fact, peasants worked so hard that even the church and lords realized, hey, if we don't let these people blow off some steam, they might revolt. So festivals became a way to keep the peace. It's like when your boss throws a pizza party instead of giving you a raise, except with more meat and less awkward small talk. Now, these festivals weren't just random parties. They were tied to the rhythm of the seasons. Think of it as their version of Google Calendar, but with more bonfires and less spam. For example, Plough Monday. This was the kickoff to the farming year. Peasants would decorate their ploughs and parade them around the village like it was a medieval car show. Lammas. Celebrated in August, this was the first harvest festival. It was all about bread, gratitude, and maybe a little bit of showing off who had the biggest wheat stack. Harvest Home. This was the grand finale of the farming year. Imagine a giant potluck, but instead of Aunt Linda's questionable casserole, it was fresh bread, roasted meats, and enough ale to make everyone forget how hard they'd worked all year. Picture this. The village square is buzzing with life. There are colorful decorations, kids running around, and the smell of fresh bread wafting through the air. The whole community is there, old, young, everyone. It's like a medieval block party, but with more hay bales and fewer selfies. For a few precious days, the grind of daily life is forgotten. And it's all about celebrating together. It's not just a festival, it's a lifeline. But here's the thing, these festivals weren't just about work and religion. Oh no, they were also a time for secrets, mischief, and even a little bit of rebellion. And trust me, things could get wild. Medieval peasants weren't just about hard work and harvests. They knew how to stir things up. Festivals like the Feast of Fools and the Lord of Misrule turned social hierarchies on their head. Peasants would mock their lords, priests, and even kings, using laughter to vent frustrations without fear of punishment. Donning masks and costumes, peasants became anonymous pranksters, free to break rules, flirt, or play tricks without revealing their identities. Some festivals even crowned animals as king or queen for the day. Imagine a goat wearing a crown and being paraded around like royalty. These events were hilarious, rebellious, and a touch magical. However, these festivals weren't merely about fun and games. They held a deeper, almost mystical significance, offering a rare opportunity for peasants to challenge the status quo and express their frustrations in a socially acceptable way. All right, let's talk about the medieval version of punked festivals where the rules got flipped upside down. Ever heard of the Feast of Fools or the Lord of Misrule? These were the days when peasants could mock their lords, priests, and even kings and get away with it. Imagine a lowly peasant sitting on a throne, pretending to be the king, while everyone laughed and cheered. It was like medieval satire, but with more ale and fewer hashtags. Why it mattered. This wasn't just about fun and games. It was a safe way for peasants to vent their frustrations without getting thrown in the dungeon. Think of it as their version of roasting their bosses on Twitter, but with costumes and parades instead of tweets. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Peasants loved a good disguise. Masks and costumes weren't just for Halloween. They were a way to break the rules, flirt, or play pranks without anyone knowing who did it. It's like medieval anonymity, but with more feathers and less Wi-Fi. Engaging fact. And get this, some festivals even involved crowning animals as king or queen for the day. Picture a donkey wearing a crown being paraded around the village like royalty. It was hilarious, absurd, and a little bit genius. Imagine the scene. A peasant dressed as the local lord, strutting around with a fake crown, while another villager in a priest's robe delivers a sermon full of jokes. Meanwhile, someone's goat is being treated like royalty, and everyone's laughing so hard they can barely stand. It was chaos, but it was their chaos, a rare moment where the powerless could poke fun at the powerful. But here's the thing. While these festivals were a blast, they weren't just about fun and games. They had a deeper, almost magical significance. And trust me, that's where things get really fascinating. Medieval festivals often blurred the line between magic and reality, with bonfires burning brightly and chants echoing through the night. Many of these celebrations had roots in ancient pagan traditions, such as Beltane, May Day, and Samhain, Halloween. Although the church attempted to Christianize these festivals, their mystical essence persisted. Peasants lit bonfires to ward off evil spirits, danced under the stars to ensure a good harvest, and sang to apple trees during the wassail tradition. Imagine a dark night illuminated by a roaring fire with a village united in chant, hoping the spirits would hear their pleas. These moments were eerie, magical, and slightly wild. However, these festivals weren't merely about superstition. They embodied hope, connection, and a touch of the supernatural. They provided a sense of community and a link to ancient traditions, offering peasants a way to connect with something greater than themselves. All right, let's get a little mystical. Did you know that many medieval peasant festivals had roots in ancient pagan traditions? That's right, long before Christianity, people were celebrating festivals like Beltane, May Day, and Samhain, Halloween. These weren't just parties, they were deeply spiritual events tied to the cycles of nature. The church tried to Christianize these festivals, but let's be real, you can't just slap a cross on a bonfire and call it a day. The mystical elements stuck around, and honestly, they made things way more interesting. Beltane, for example, was all about fertility and fire. People would dance around bonfires, hoping for a good harvest, and maybe a little luck in love. It's like medieval Tinder, but with more dancing and fewer awkward messages. Speaking of bonfires, they weren't just for roasting marshmallows. These fires were believed to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck. Take Midsummer Eve, for example. Villagers would light huge bonfires, dance around them, and sometimes even jump over the flames for good measure. And then there's the wassail tradition, where peasants would bless apple trees by singing, shouting, and pouring cider on the roots. Yes, you heard that right, they partied with trees. Some rituals were so intense they'd make you wonder if the peasants were secretly wizards. For example, during Samhain, the precursor to Halloween, people believed the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. So they'd light bonfires and wear costumes to scare off ghosts. Sound familiar? That's where modern Halloween comes from. Picture this. It's a dark, chilly night, and the village is gathered around a roaring bonfire. The flames crackle, casting eerie shadows on everyone's faces. Someone starts chanting, and soon the whole crowd joins in, their voices rising into the night. There's a sense of magic in the air, like anything could happen. Maybe the spirits are listening. Maybe the harvest will be good. Or maybe it's just the ale talking. Either way, it's a night no one will forget. But these festivals weren't just about magic and superstition. They had a profound emotional and psychological impact on the peasants themselves. Let's dive into what these celebrations really meant for them. Life as a medieval peasant was challenging, filled with backbreaking labor, constant worry, and the ever-present threat of disease. Festivals offered a vital escape from these hardships. These celebrations provided more than just food and fun. They were a lifeline offering hope, joy, and a sense of belonging in an often harsh world. Imagine working tirelessly all year only to gather with your entire village for a few days of music, dance, and storytelling. These festivals served as a form of medieval therapy, preserving culture and identity through shared songs, dances, and stories passed down through generations. Traditions like the Morris dance are still performed today, testament to their enduring significance. Festivals weren't merely a break from the daily grind, they were a reminder of what made life worth living. However, despite their importance, many of these traditions have faded over time. Let's explore why these celebrations are no longer as prevalent. Let's get real for a second. Life as a medieval peasant was hard. Backbreaking labor, constant worry about crops, and the ever-looming threat of disease. But here's the thing. Festivals weren't just a break from the grind. They were a lifeline. These celebrations gave peasants something to look forward to, a chance to feel joy, hope, and a sense of belonging. Imagine working all year and then, for a few glorious days, you get to eat, dance, and laugh with your entire village. It wasn't just fun, it was therapy, medieval style. Festivals were so important that even during wars or famines, communities would find a way to celebrate. It was their way of saying, life is tough, but we're tougher. Now let's talk about the real magic: music, dance, and storytelling. These weren't just entertainment. They were how peasants preserved their culture and identity. Songs were passed down from grandparents to parents to children, each generation adding their own twist. Dances weren't just for fun. They were a way to connect with each other and with their ancestors. And storytelling? That's how they kept their history alive, one tale at a time. Here's the cool part. Some of these medieval songs and dances are still performed today. Ever heard of the Morris dance? It's a traditional English folk dance that dates back to the Middle Ages. People are still doing it, which means those peasants really knew how to throw a party that stood the test of time. Picture this: a village square lit by firelight, the sound of a lute playing in the background, and a crowd of people clapping and singing along. An old storyteller begins a tale of knights and dragons, and everyone leans in, captivated. For a moment, the hardships of life fade away, and all that's left is joy, connection, and a sense of belonging. It's not just a festival. It's a reminder of what makes life worth living. But here's the question: if these festivals were so important, why don't we celebrate them anymore? What happened to these traditions that brought so much joy and meaning to people's lives? Let's find out. The vibrancy of medieval peasant festivals began to fade with the advent of the Reformation and the rise of Puritanism. These movements deemed the festivals too pagan and too rowdy, leading to the banning of traditions like the Feast of Fools and even the temporary cancellation of Christmas. As society transitioned from agrarian to industrial, festivals tied to the agricultural calendar, such as Plough Monday and Harvest Home, lost their relevance. People shifted from farming to factory work, leaving little time for traditional celebrations. The world moved from haystacks to smokestacks, and many festivals faded into obscurity. However, the legacy of these festivals did not vanish entirely. Their influence persists in modern traditions and celebrations, often in unexpected ways. This enduring impact highlights the resilience of cultural practices and their ability to adapt over time. All right, let's talk about the party poopers of history, the Reformation and the Puritans. These guys looked at medieval festivals and said, nope, too pagan, too rowdy, too much fun. Suddenly, festivals that had been celebrated for centuries were banned or heavily suppressed. The Feast of Fools? Gone? The Lord of Misrule? Cancelled. Even May Day celebrations were toned down. It's like someone took away the medieval version of Coachella and replaced it with a lecture on why fun is bad. The Puritans were so serious about this that they even banned Christmas at one point. Yep, Christmas. They thought it was too festive and not holy enough. But it wasn't just the Puritans. As society shifted from farming to factories, the old ways of life started to disappear. Festivals that were tied to the agricultural calendar, like Plow Monday or Harvest Home, just didn't make sense anymore. People were moving to cities, working in factories, and living by the clock instead of the seasons. The result? Many of these traditions faded away, like a bonfire slowly burning out. By the 19th century, some of these festivals were almost forgotten. It wasn't until folklorists and historians started digging into the past that people remembered how vibrant and important they once were. Imagine this: a village that once lit up with bonfires, music, and laughter now sits quiet. The fields that were once the heart of harvest celebrations are empty. The songs and dances that brought people together are barely remembered. It's a sad shift, but it's also a reminder of how much the world was changing. But here's the good news: these festivals didn't disappear completely. Their legacy lives on in ways you might not expect. And trust me, it's pretty cool. The best part about medieval peasant festivals is that, although they may have faded, their legacy endures in many modern traditions. Consider Halloween. The spooky costumes and jack-o'-lanterns originate from Samhain, an ancient festival where bonfires were lit to ward off ghosts. Or May Day. The maypole dances and flower crowns are remnants of Beltane, a medieval celebration of spring. Even Christmas traditions like the Yule log trace back to peasants burning logs to keep winter spirits at bay. Moreover, medieval festivals are experiencing a revival through Renaissance fairs and historical reenactments, where participants dress up, joust, and feast as if transported back to the Middle Ages. So, the next time you celebrate a holiday, remember that you're continuing traditions that date back to medieval peasants who found joy and resilience in challenging times. All right, here's the cool part. Medieval peasant festivals might have faded, but their spirit lives on in ways you probably never realized. Take Halloween, for example. Those spooky costumes and jack-o'-lanterns. They're straight out of Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival where people lit bonfires and wore disguises to scare off ghosts. Or how about May Day? The maypole dances and flower crowns we see today are a direct throwback to Beltane, the medieval festival celebrating spring and fertility. And let's not forget Christmas traditions like the Yule log. Yep, that cozy fireplace staple comes from medieval peasants burning a giant log to ward off evil spirits during the winter solstice. So, next time you're carving a pumpkin or dancing around a maypole, remember, you're basically time traveling to the Middle Ages. Even the tradition of wassailing, singing to apple trees, is still alive in some parts of England. It's like medieval karaoke, but for orchards. But wait, it gets better. Medieval festivals aren't just hiding in modern holidays, they're making a full-on comeback. Ever heard of Renaissance fairs? These are massive events where people dress up in medieval costumes, joust, feast, and basically live their best peasant life for a weekend. And then there are historical reenactments, where enthusiasts recreate everything from medieval battles to village festivals. It's like stepping into a time machine, but with better food and cleaner bathrooms. Some Renaissance fairs even crown a king and queen for the day, just like medieval peasants did with their animals. Talk about keeping traditions alive. Picture this. You're at a Renaissance fair, surrounded by people in flowing gowns and tunics. There's a jousting match happening in the distance. The smell of roasted turkey legs fills the air, and someone's playing a lute nearby. For a moment, you're not in the 21st century, you're back in the Middle Ages, celebrating life just like those peasants did. It's a reminder that even though times have changed, the human need for joy, connection, and a good party hasn't. So next time you celebrate a holiday or attend a festival, take a moment to appreciate the history behind it. You're carrying on traditions that date back to medieval peasants who knew how to find joy in the darkest of times. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more hidden histories. See you in the next video. So let's wrap this up. Medieval peasant festivals weren't just parties, they were survival, rebellion, mysticism, and joy all rolled into one. They were a break from back-breaking labor, a chance to flip the social script, and a way to connect with something bigger than themselves. Whether it was dancing around a bonfire, mocking their lords, or blessing apple trees, these festivals were a lifeline in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Fun fact: Even though these festivals were rooted in the Middle Ages, their legacy lives on in our modern holidays and celebrations. It's like a little piece of medieval magic that's still with us today. Medieval peasant festivals remind us of something important. Even in the hardest times, humans find ways to celebrate, connect, and hope. They show us that joy isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. And that's a secret worth remembering, whether you're living in the Middle Ages or the modern world. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more hidden histories. Because history isn't just about dates and facts, it's about stories, secrets, and the incredible ways people have found to make life worth living. See you in the next video.